The words hit Catherine Walsh like a physical blow. "You're too old to start over." Her sister-in-law Linda said it with a smile, but the cruelty was unmistakable. But 8 months later, when Catherine discovered $267 million hidden in a reinforced bunker beneath the burned ruins of a mansion, everyone told her to demolish. Those same people would beg for a second chance. This is the true story of how a 58-year-old widow's darkest hour became her greatest triumph, and how an inheritance everyone mocked transformed not just one life, but an entire struggling town. Before we dive into this incredible journey, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and broken dreams. Catherine sat in the worn leather chair, her hands folded in her lap, trying to make herself smaller. At 58, she'd perfected the art of disappearing into rooms. 3 years since Michael died. 3 years of living on a widow's pension that didn't stretch far enough. 3 years of watching her savings evaporate while her late husband's family made it clear she was no longer welcome. Mrs. Walsh, Harold Brennan, adjusted his reading glasses. "I'm afraid the estate is quite unusual." Catherine's stomach knotted. Unusual meant expensive, meant complications she couldn't afford. "Your husband's uncle, Edmund Walsh, passed away 6 months ago. You're the sole beneficiary." "I never met Edmund," Catherine said quietly. Michael had mentioned an eccentric uncle once or twice, the family outcast who'd lived alone for decades. "Yes, well," Brennan shuffled papers. "He left you his property, a mansion in Riverside Heights, about 90 miles from here." Catherine's heart sank further. "I can't afford a mansion. The taxes alone." "Mrs. Walsh, there's something you should know. The property was damaged in a fire last year. Extensively damaged. The east wing is completely destroyed. The rest is, structurally, questionable." She stared at him. "He left me a burned house?" "I'm afraid so. The insurance had lapsed. The city has been pressuring us to demolish it, but that's now your responsibility. Given your financial situation, I'd recommend selling the land. Once the structure is cleared, of course, at your expense." Catherine felt the walls closing in. An inheritance that wasn't an inheritance. Just another burden. Another reminder that at 58, widowed and broke, she had nothing left but problems. The drive to Riverside Heights took 2 hours. Catherine's ancient Corolla protested every mile. The check engine light her constant companion. She'd called her daughter Amy before leaving, hoping for support. "Mom, this is insane," Amy said. She was 32, successful, married to a lawyer. Everything Catherine had wanted for her. Just refuse the inheritance. Walk away. "The lawyer says I can't. Not without going through probate, which I can't afford. Then sell it fast." "God, Mom, you can't actually be thinking of keeping a burned mansion." But Catherine was thinking exactly that. Not because she wanted to, because she had no choice. Her landlord had just raised the rent again. She couldn't afford her apartment anymore. And a burned mansion, structurally questionable or not, had a roof. Parts of a roof anyway. Riverside Heights looked like it had seen better days. The downtown area was half-empty storefronts and faded glory. Victorian houses lined streets with more potholes than pavement. The economic decline that had hit so many small towns had hit this one particularly hard. The Walsh mansion sat on a hill at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown gardens and a rusted iron fence. Catherine's breath caught when she saw it. It had been beautiful once, 3 stories of Victorian grandeur, with turrets and gables and intricate stonework. But the fire had ravaged the entire east wing. Windows were blown out. The roof had collapsed in sections. Blackened timbers jutted out like broken bones. She parked at the gate. The lock was broken, hanging uselessly. As she walked up the weed-choked drive, a voice called out, "You the Walsh woman?" Catherine turned to see a man in his 72nd, arms crossed, face hard with judgment. "I'm Catherine Walsh, yes. Figured. You here to finally tear down this eyesore?" Others were emerging from neighboring houses, an audience for her shame. I just inherited it." "I haven't decided." "Nothing to decide." A woman cut in. She was younger, maybe 50, dressed in expensive athletic wear. "That death trap has been bringing down property values for a year. City should have condemned it months ago. My husband owned this house for 40 years. An elderly woman added, her voice sharp. "Worked hard to keep this neighborhood respectable. Edmund Walsh let it rot. And now you show up looking like—" She stopped. But the judgment was clear. "Looking like a poor widow who couldn't afford better." "I'm just trying to figure out what to do," Catherine said, hating how small her voice sounded. "What to do?" The first man laughed bitterly. "You're 60 years old. Living on what? Social Security? You can't fix that mess. You can't afford to demolish it. You're just another problem this neighborhood doesn't need." "I'm 58, Catherine said automatically, then felt foolish for caring. "Whatever. Point is, you're too old to start over. Do everyone a favor and walk away. Let the city deal with it." Catherine felt tears burning behind her eyes. But she'd learned not to cry in front of people who enjoyed your pain. She simply nodded and walked toward the house. Behind her, she heard them talking, not even bothering to whisper. Pathetic, really. What kind of person thinks they can handle a project like this at her age? Probably can't even afford to stay in a motel. Bet she's planning to squat in that ruin. Well, she won't last long. First winter storm will finish what the fire started. The front door was unlocked. The insurance company had cleared out anything valuable long ago. Catherine stepped inside and immediately understood why they'd given up. The smell hit her first. Char and mold and decay. The foyer was barely recognizable. The grand staircase that must have once been magnificent now tilted at a dangerous angle. Water damage from firefighting efforts had destroyed the floors in patches. Everything was covered in soot and ash. She walked carefully, testing each step. The west wing seemed less damaged. Here, the destruction was from neglect rather than flames. Rooms filled with furniture covered in tarps. A kitchen from the 1962, outdated but structurally intact. Catherine found herself in what must have been Edmund's study. The fire had barely touched this room. Books lined the walls, their spines faded. A desk sat in the corner. Papers scattered across its surface, as if Edmund had just stepped away. She sat in his chair and finally let herself cry. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears of exhaustion and despair. She was 58 years old. Her husband had been dead for 3 years. Her savings were gone. Her family had made it clear she was a burden, and now she owned a mansion that was literally falling apart around her. What was she supposed to do with this? As her tears dried, Catherine began examining Edmund's papers. Bills, mostly, all stamped final notice. Letters from the city threatening demolition. But there was also something else. A journal, leather-bound and surprisingly well-maintained. She opened it to a random page. The 15th of April, 1987. They think I'm crazy for staying. The neighbors, the city officials, even my own family. But what they don't understand is that this house holds more than memories. It holds responsibility. A duty to protect what I was entrusted with. Let them think I'm mad. Better they believe that than discover the truth. Catherine flipped through more pages. Edmund's handwriting grew shakier over the years, but the theme remained constant. He was protecting something, guarding something important. The 3rd of March 2019. The fire was deliberate. I know it was. They've found me somehow. But the bunker held. It always holds. The house can burn around it, but what's below remains secure. I won't have much time left now. Old age and smoke inhalation have caught up with me. But I've made arrangements. Catherine will inherit. Michael's widow. She has his strength, his integrity. She'll know what to do. Catherine stared at that entry. Edmund had known her name, had chosen her specifically. But why? If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. She kept reading. Catherine doesn't know it yet, but she's about to become the guardian of something that could change everything. The others will try to take it from her. They'll mock her, threaten her, try to force her out. She must be strong. The bunker's location is in the one place they'd never look, where fire destroyed everything except what matters most. The bunker. Edmund kept mentioning a bunker. Catherine stood, legs stiff from sitting. She looked around the study with new eyes. If she were hiding a bunker, where would she put it? Not in the West Wing, where everything remained relatively intact. Searches would focus there. The East Wing. The destroyed section. The part everyone assumed was a total loss. Catherine picked her way carefully through the damaged areas. The floor was treacherous here, burned through in places. She used a broken piece of timber to test each step before trusting her weight to it. The East Wing had been Edmund's private quarters, according to the floor plan she'd found. A master bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, all now open to the sky where the roof had collapsed. But as Catherine explored, she noticed something odd. The fire damage was severe, everywhere except one corner of what had been the bedroom. Here, the floor seemed different. Scorched, yes, but not consumed. And beneath the ash, she could make out metal. She knelt carefully and began brushing away debris. Definitely metal. A seam. A door. Her heart pounded as she worked to clear the area. It took an hour, her hands getting cut on sharp edges, her clothes black with soot. But finally, she revealed it. A steel hatch, flush with the floor. It looked military-grade, designed to withstand anything. The fire had barely scratched it. There was a combination lock. 6 digits. Catherine's mind raced. What would Edmund use? She tried his birthday based on dates in the journal. Nothing. She tried various years, significant to the house. Nothing. Then she remembered. Michael's birthday. She tried it. Click. The mechanism released. Catherine gripped the handle and pulled. The hatch was incredibly heavy, but counterweighted. It opened smoothly, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. She used her phone's flashlight to peer down. Metal rungs leading at least 20 feet into the earth. At the bottom, she could see concrete walls and what looked like a door. Catherine took a deep breath. She was 58 years old, afraid of heights, and descending into an underground bunker beneath a burned mansion felt like something from a movie, not her life. But Edmund had trusted her with this. Whatever this was, she started climbing down. The ladder was solid, well-maintained despite everything else. At the bottom, Catherine found herself in a small concrete chamber. The air was cool, dry, filtered somehow. Lights flickered on automatically, responding to motion sensors. The door ahead was steel, like the hatch above, but this one had a keypad, and taped to it was an envelope with her name. Catherine's hands shook as she opened it. Catherine, if you're reading this, you found the first entrance. Good. That means you didn't give up when they told you to. You didn't believe them when they said you were too old, too poor, too pathetic to matter. The code is your wedding anniversary. Michael never forgot it, even after all these years away from family. He was a good man. You made him happy. That's why I chose you. Inside, you'll find my life's work. More than that, you'll find justice waiting to be served. This isn't just an inheritance, Catherine. It's a mission, and I believe you're exactly the right person for it. Trust no one. Document everything. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is living well. Edmund Catherine entered her wedding anniversary. The 14th of October, 1985. The 14th of October, 2085. The door, unsealed with a pneumatic hiss, and swung open. The bunker beyond was massive. Not just one room, but a complex of chambers, all climate-controlled and lit by efficient LED strips. The main chamber alone was the size of her entire apartment, and it was filled with money, pallets of it. stacked neatly, organized methodically. But not just loose bills. These were bank wrappers, official-looking, labeled, and dated. Catherine walked forward in a daze. One pallet held bundles marked $100,000 each. She counted quickly. 20 bundles per pallet. 8 pallets. $16 million. Just in that section. But there were other sections. Gold bars stacked on reinforced shelving. Diamonds in clear cases. Bearer bonds in archival storage. And along one wall, filing cabinets. Dozens of them. Each drawer meticulously labeled. Catherine opened the nearest one and pulled out a file at random. Inside were bank statements, transaction records, correspondence, all related to something called the Riverside Development Scheme of 1979. She opened another file. More records. The Riverside Pension Fund. Theft, 1,985 to 1,992. Another. City Council bribery and corruption, 1,975 to 2,000. Catherine sank into a desk chair that Edmund had apparently set up down here. There was a computer, modern and incongruous in this concrete bunker. A note was taped to the screen. Password. Justice. Read the files labeled. Start here. You'll understand everything. She powered on the computer. While it booted, she explored further. Another chamber held what looked like living supplies. Food, water, medical equipment. Edmund had prepared this space to be sustainable for months. A third chamber was empty, except for a large table with a tarp over it. Catherine pulled the tarp back and gasped. More money! But these weren't pallets. These were open cases, showing the full contents. Stacks of $100 bills, neatly organized and bound. A ledger sat beside them. Catherine opened it to the last entry. Final count. $267 million. Stolen from 1,247 Riverside Heights families over 40 years. Recovered through patient investigation and careful maneuvering over 35 years. Hidden and protected from those who stole it. Now ready to be returned to those who deserve it. Catherine, this is your inheritance. Not the house, though that too is yours. Not the money itself, though you'll need some of it. Your inheritance is the chance to be what I couldn't be. The person who makes this right publicly. Who stands up to those who think the old, the widowed, the struggling don't matter. Who proves that justice delayed is not justice denied. The files contain everything. Every crime, every perpetrator, every victim. Some are dead now, but many are alive. And the criminals? They're still here, still in power, still stealing. Use this wisely. And Catherine? Give them hell. Catherine spent the next 4 hours reading files. The story they told was staggering. In the 1,970 seconds and 80 seconds, a group of Riverside Heights officials had systematically looted the town. Development funds disappeared. Pension investments vanished. Property taxes were collected but never recorded. It was sophisticated, organized theft that stripped wealth from working families and funneled it into private accounts. Edmund Walsh had been a forensic accountant. He'd uncovered it by accident while doing routine work for the city, and when he tried to report it, he'd been threatened, discredited, called crazy. So, he'd spent the next 35 years quietly, methodically, tracking every dollar and recovering what he could. Shell companies, offshore accounts, legal maneuvering. He'd been patient and brilliant. And he'd hidden it all here, waiting for the right moment. The right person. The criminals thought they'd gotten away with it. Thought Edmund was just a crazy old man in a decaying mansion. The fire last year had been their final attempt to destroy any evidence he might have kept. But they'd never found the bunker. Never imagined it existed. Catherine looked at the names in the files. Some she didn't recognize. But others. Linda Walsh. Her sister-in-law, who'd called her too old to start over. On the list. $340,000 in kickbacks from fraudulent city contracts. 1,988 to 1,995. Richard Drummond, the neighbor who'd sneered at her. On the list, $180,000 from the stolen pension fund. Margaret Chen, the woman in athletic wear. On the list, $520,000 from real estate fraud. They weren't just cruel neighbors. They were criminals who'd gotten rich off other people's suffering, and they'd been living free for decades while their victims struggled. Catherine felt something shift inside her. She'd spent 3 years being small, being apologetic for existing, for being widowed, for being broke, for being in the way. But Edmund had seen something in her, a strength she'd forgotten she had. She was 58 years old. She'd raised a daughter alone while Michael worked 60-hour weeks. She'd managed their household finances so carefully, they'd never missed a payment. She'd survived his death and 3 years of loneliness and poverty with her dignity intact. And now she had $267 million and evidence of massive corruption. She wasn't too old for this. She was exactly the right age. Old enough to have nothing to lose. Old enough to not care what they thought. Old enough to know that power wasn't about money. It was about courage. Catherine made her decision. She climbed back up the ladder, sealed the hatch, and walked out of the burned mansion with her head high. In the morning, she'd start making calls. Lawyers, journalists, federal investigators. But, tonight, she'd sleep in her car in the driveway of her mansion. Let the neighbors see her. Let them think she was desperate. They had no idea what was coming. The next day, Catherine woke to someone banging on her car window. She'd slept in the back seat of her Corolla, parked in the mansion's circular driveway. Every muscle ached from the cramped position. "You can't sleep here," a woman was shouting. Margaret Chen, from yesterday, even more outraged in the morning light. "This is a residential neighborhood. There are ordinances." Catherine slowly got out of the car. Her back protested. Her hair was a mess. She probably looked exactly like what they expected. A desperate old woman, with nowhere else to go. "I own this property," Catherine said calmly. "I can sleep where I choose. The house is uninhabitable. You're essentially camping, which is illegal." Others were gathering. The morning dog walkers and joggers, all stopping to watch the spectacle. "Someone call the police." "Richard," Drummond said. "Get her removed before she attracts more homeless." The words stung, but Catherine remembered the files in the bunker. Richard's file specifically. The way he'd stolen from the pension fund that should have supported retired teachers and firefighters. People who'd worked their whole lives and found their retirement savings mysteriously depleted. "Go ahead and call them," Catherine said. "I'd love to speak to the police." That seemed to give them pause. Margaret's hand hovered over her phone. "You're making a mistake," another neighbor said. A man in his 60s, wearing expensive golf attire. "We've been trying to get this property cleaned up for a year. If you won't sell, at least have the decency to demolish it properly." "I might do that," Catherine said. "After I renovate the parts worth saving." They laughed. Actually laughed at her. "Renovate?" Margaret's laugh was particularly cruel. "With what money? You drove here in a car held together by hope and duct tape." "Appearances can be deceiving," Catherine said. "Look at her," Richard said to the others. "She actually thinks she can fix this. Probably planning to apply for some hardship grant. Stick us taxpayers with the bill." "Yeah," another woman chimed in. "While the rest of us worked hard and saved responsibly, people like her expect handouts." Catherine looked at each of them. Really looked. They were all around her age or older. All living in beautiful homes in a neighborhood they'd stolen their way into. Standing there in their expensive clothes and their righteous judgment, having no idea she knew exactly who they were. "I need to make some calls," she said. "Excuse me." She got back in her car, rolled up the windows, and pulled out the burner phone she'd bought last night at a 24-hour store. Edmund's note had been clear. Trust no one. Use untraceable communications until you're ready. Her first call was to a law firm in the state capital. Criminal defense lawyers who specialized in whistleblower cases. Solomon and Price. A receptionist answered. I need to speak with Thomas Solomon. It's about a fraud case involving approximately $267 million and 40 years of public corruption. There was a pause. Ma'am, tell him I have documentation. Tell him I have the money. And tell him time is critical because the people involved know I'm here. 10 minutes later, she was talking to Thomas Solomon himself. She gave him the abbreviated version. Edmund's investigation. The bunker. The files. The money. Mrs. Walsh. Solomon said carefully. These are extraordinary claims. I have extraordinary evidence. If what you're saying is true, you're in danger. These people have killed to keep this secret. I know. The fire that destroyed the house wasn't an accident. Then we need to move fast. Can you get to our office? Not without them seeing. They're watching me. Solomon thought for a moment. There's a library in Riverside Heights, public place. Can you get there? I think so. Be there at noon. I'll send 2 associates. They'll have documentation for you to sign, giving us legal authority to act on your behalf. Then we get you somewhere safe while we handle this. What about the money? The evidence? Is it secure where it is? Catherine thought about the bunker. Military-grade steel doors, hidden beneath a burned mansion no one wanted to enter. Yes. Then it stays there for now. We'll arrange federal security once we bring in the authorities. After she hung up, Catherine sat quietly. This was really happening. She was about to blow apart the lives of everyone who'd ever looked down on her. Everyone who'd told her she was too old, too poor, too pathetic. But she thought of the files, the families who'd lost everything, the retirees eating cat food because their pensions had disappeared, the young couples who'd lost their homes in fraudulent development schemes. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. At 11:30, Catherine started her car. The neighbors were still watching. Let them. She drove slowly through Riverside Heights, seeing it with new eyes. The beautiful old buildings hiding ugly secrets, the prosperous surface covering decades of theft. The library was a Carnegie building, one of the few properties that had been maintained over the years. Catherine parked and went inside. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, smiled at her. Can I help you find something? Just a quiet place to read, Catherine said. Back corner is usually empty this time of day. Catherine settled into a corner table with a newspaper she didn't read. At noon exactly, 2 people approached. A man and woman, both in their 30s, dressed professionally, but not flashy. Mrs. Walsh? The woman asked quietly. Catherine nodded. I'm Jennifer Price. This is Marcus Reed. Mr. Solomon sent us. They sat quickly, pulling out tablets and documents. We need to move fast, Marcus said. We've already contacted the FBI's public corruption unit. They're standing by. But we need your signature on these documents first. For the next 30 minutes, Catherine read and signed. Power of attorney. Witness statements. Authorization for investigation. The FBI will want to see the evidence, Jennifer said. But Mr. Solomon is recommending we get you into protective custody first. I'm not hiding, Catherine said. Mrs. Walsh. Catherine. And I'm not hiding. These people have spent 40 years thinking they're untouchable. I want them to see me. I want them to know it was the pathetic old widow who brought them down. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged glances. That's not standard procedure, Marcus said carefully. I don't care. I spent 3 years being invisible, being apologetic. Edmund left me this mission, and I'm going to see it through, publicly. Jennifer smiled slowly. Mr. Solomon said you had spine. Okay. But we're assigning protection, and everything you do from now on is documented. Fine. One more thing. Marcus pulled out a checkbook. Mr. Solomon said you'd probably need immediate funds. The firm is advancing you $50,000 against future fees. Consider it a good faith payment. Catherine stared at the check. More money than she'd seen in years. I can't. You can. And you will. You're about to take on some very powerful people. You need resources. That evening, Catherine checked into the Riverside Hotel. The nicest place in town. Not a palace, but clean and comfortable. The desk clerk did a double take when she walked in. I need a room, Catherine said, for at least a week. That will be. I know what it costs. Catherine pulled out the check, got it cashed at the bank next door, and paid in cash. The clerk's expression was priceless. As she settled into her room, her phone rang. Her daughter Amy. Mom, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean? Linda called me. Said you're making a spectacle of yourself in Riverside Heights. Sleeping in your car. Make threats. I didn't make any threats. She says you're unstable. That inheriting that house has made you crazy. She's talking about having you declared incompetent. Catherine felt cold rage settle over her. Is she now? Mom, please, just come home. Sell the property and move on. Amy, do you trust me? What? Do you trust me? Do you think I'm crazy? No, but I'm worried about you. Don't be. Everything's going to be fine. Better than fine. But I need you to trust me for a little while longer. After Amy hung up, still worried but somewhat reassured, Catherine stood at her hotel window looking out at Riverside Heights. Somewhere out there, people were starting to panic. Starting to wonder what that crazy widow was up to. Good. Let them wonder. The next morning brought news that spread through town like wildfire. FBI agents had arrived. 6 of them, setting up in a commandeered conference room at City Hall. They'd requested files going back 40 years, and they specifically asked to speak with several prominent residents. Catherine watched the panic spread from her seat in the hotel restaurant. People came in for coffee and left pale and shaking. Phones rang constantly. Whispered conversations filled every corner. Margaret Chen rushed past the restaurant window, nearly running to her car. Richard Drummond was seen arguing with his lawyer on the street. By noon, Catherine received a call from Jennifer. They're starting to crack, Jennifer said. 3 of them have already contacted lawyers. The FBI is moving faster than we expected. What about Linda? My sister-in-law. She's been trying to leave town, but there's an unofficial request for her to remain available for questioning. Catherine felt a grim satisfaction. Good. That afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. The elderly librarian from the previous day appeared in the hotel lobby. Mrs. Walsh, I'm Dorothy Chen. May I speak with you? They sat in a quiet corner. Dorothy's hands shook slightly. I'm Margaret's mother, she said quietly. I know what she's done. What they've all done. Catherine waited. My husband worked for the city for 30 years. When he retired, his pension was supposed to be $2,400 a month. Instead, he got $800. They told him there had been investment losses, but there weren't. The money was stolen. I'm sorry, Catherine said softly. He died 5 years ago. Worked until he was 73 because we couldn't survive on that pension. Died of a heart attack changing oil at a quick lube place. Tears ran down Dorothy's face. And my daughter, my own daughter, was one of the people who stole from him. You knew? I suspected. But I'm an old woman. Who would believe me? Who would listen? She looked at Catherine intensely. But they're listening now. Because of you. Not because of me. Because of Edmund Walsh. I'm just finishing what he started. Thank you, Dorothy whispered. Thank you for having the courage. As she left, Catherine realized something. She wasn't doing this alone. There were others, like Dorothy. Victims who'd been silent for decades. Now they had hope. Over the next week, the dominoes fell with increasing speed. The FBI arrested Richard Drummond first. Fraud, conspiracy, theft of public funds. The charges went back to 1985. Margaret Chen tried to make a deal, offering to testify against others in exchange for leniency. The FBI accepted. Linda Walsh was arrested at the airport trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. They found $200,000 in cash in her luggage. 12 more arrests followed. City officials, business owners, lawyers, all connected to the 40-year conspiracy. But the biggest moment came when the FBI unsealed the bunker. Catherine stood with Thomas Solomon and a team of federal agents as they descended into Edmund's hidden chambers. Their expressions, as they saw the organized evidence, the meticulously documented crimes, the recovered money, were almost worth the entire ordeal. "This is incredible," the lead agent said. "I've never seen anything like this." He built a case that would stand up in any court. "He spent 35 years on it," Catherine said. "He deserves the credit." "No." The agent looked at her seriously. "He laid the groundwork. But you're the one who had the courage to bring it to light. That takes a different kind of strength." The town meeting was scheduled for a Saturday morning. The FBI had requested it, wanting to address the community directly. Catherine arrived early. She'd bought a new dress, nothing expensive, just clean and appropriate. She'd had her hair done, not because she cared what they thought anymore, but because she wanted them to see her clearly. The town hall was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. And when Catherine walked in, the room went silent. She took a seat in the front row, felt hundreds of eyes on her back. The FBI agent in charge, Special Agent Rebecca Morrison, took the podium. "Thank you all for coming. I know the past weeks have been shocking for this community. Arrests of prominent citizens, investigations into beloved institutions. I'm here to explain why this was necessary." She laid out the case. 40 years of systematic theft. Over $250 million stolen from Riverside Heights residents. Pension funds looted. Development money diverted. Tax dollars stolen. "One man tried to stop it decades ago," Morrison continued. "Edmund Walsh, who many of you knew as an eccentric recluse. The truth is, Mr. Walsh was a hero. He spent 35 years investigating, documenting, and recovering what was stolen." She paused. "And when he died, he passed that mission to his grandniece, Catherine Walsh, who, despite mockery, threats, and enormous pressure, brought this evidence to us." The room erupted. Some people stood and applauded. Others sat in shocked silence. Catherine saw Dorothy Chen in the back, tears streaming down her face. "As of today," Morrison said, "we have recovered approximately $267 million. After legal proceedings, this money will be returned to its rightful owners, the families who were cheated, the retirees who lost their pensions, the couples who lost their homes." More applause. Catherine felt tears burning in her eyes. "Mrs. Walsh has also established a foundation," Morrison continued, "the Edmund Walsh Justice Foundation, which will distribute recovered funds and provide support for other victims of public corruption." After the meeting, people approached Catherine, some to thank her, others to apologize. One couple in their 70s stood before her, holding hands. "We lost our restaurant in 1983, the woman said. "They told us it was economic downturn, but it was fraud. We've lived in a mobile home for 40 years because of them. You'll get compensation," Catherine said gently. "I promise. It's not about the money anymore," the man said. "It's about knowing we weren't failures, that it wasn't our fault." The restitution process took months. Catherine worked with lawyers and accountants to verify claims and distribute funds. It was tedious, exhausting work. But slowly, justice was done. The couple who'd lost their restaurant received $340,000. They reopened, calling it Edmund's Place, in his honor. Dorothy Chen received her husband's full pension, retroactively calculated. She donated a portion to the library in his name. Dozens of families received payments that changed their lives. College funds for grandchildren. Medical bills paid. Homes saved from foreclosure. The Riverside Heights, that had been slowly dying, began to revive. Not because of the money alone, but because of what it represented. Justice. acknowledgement, hope. Catherine kept very little for herself. Just enough to renovate the mansion properly and secure her future. The rest went to the foundation and to victims. When Linda was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, she begged Catherine for forgiveness. "You were right," Catherine told her calmly. "I was too old to start over. Too old to be the person I was. But I was exactly the right age to become who I needed to be." A year after she'd inherited the burned mansion, Catherine stood on its newly renovated front porch. The east wing had been rebuilt, the grounds restored, but she'd kept Edmund's study exactly as it was, turning it into a small museum dedicated to his work. Amy came to visit, bringing Catherine's grandchildren. They ran through the gardens while Catherine and Amy sat on the porch swing. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in you," Amy said quietly. "You were protecting me. That's what daughters do. Still, you were incredible, Mom. You are incredible." Catherine smiled. "I'm just a 8-year-old widow who got tired of being invisible. You're more than that. You're a hero." "No. Edmund was the hero. I just had the timing he never did. And the anger." That evening, after Amy and the grandchildren left, Catherine walked through the mansion alone. It was beautiful now. But more importantly, it was purposeful. The foundation offices occupied the first floor. Staff worked there daily, helping other victims of corruption around the state. The second floor was her home. Finally, after 3 years, she had a home that was truly hers. And in the basement, the bunker remained. Empty now, but preserved. A reminder of one man's 35-year fight for justice, and the widow who'd finished it. Catherine stood in the bunker's main chamber, remembering that first day, how she'd climbed down that ladder, not knowing what she'd find, how she'd been so small, so defeated. She wasn't that person anymore. The neighbors who'd mocked her now nodded respectfully when they saw her. The town that had dismissed her now celebrated her. Her daughter finally understood her. But the real victory was quieter than all that. It was Dorothy Chen able to live with dignity. It was the restaurant reopened after 40 years. It was the families who could finally afford to send grandchildren to college. It was justice, delayed but not denied. Catherine climbed back up the ladder and sealed the hatch. Tomorrow there would be more work, more claims to process, more victims to help. But tonight, she'd sit on her porch and watch the sunset over Riverside Heights. The town that had tried to break her. The town she'd saved instead. At 58, widowed and broke, she'd been called too old to start over. They were right. She hadn't started over. She'd started something entirely new. Something Edmund had dreamed of, but never lived to see. A movement that proved the overlooked, the dismissed, the mocked could change everything. Because sometimes the greatest power doesn't come from wealth or position or youth. Sometimes it comes from a widow who's lost everything except her courage. And that's more than enough to change the world. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 15 years after Jennifer had first discovered the bunker. She was in her office at the Walsh Foundation headquarters, a renovated, historic building downtown that now served as the nerve center for all their operations, when her assistant knocked softly. "Mrs. Walsh, there's someone here to see you. She says it's about Douglas Whitmore." Jennifer looked up from the grant applications she'd been reviewing, her heart skipping a beat. Even after all these years, Douglas's name still carried weight. Did she give a name? "Catherine Whitmore. She says she's Douglas's ex-wife." Jennifer's breath caught. Catherine Whitmore. The woman who'd supposedly left Douglas after the market crash, whose death had driven him into decades of isolation. Except, apparently, she hadn't died at all. Send her in. The woman who entered was in her 70s, elegant in a way that spoke of old money and careful preservation. She had sharp blue eyes that swept the office, taking in the foundation's awards on the walls, the photos of families they'd helped, the portrait of Douglas that Jennifer had commissioned years ago. "So it's true," Catherine said, her voice carrying a slight tremor. "You found it. His treasure." Jennifer gestured to a chair, her mind racing. "Mrs. Whitmore, I was told you died." In 1989, Catherine sat down slowly, her hands gripping her purse. That's what Douglas believed. What I let him believe. It was easier than the truth. Which was that I didn't die, I left. Not because of the crash, but because of what it did to him. Douglas became someone I didn't recognize. The paranoia, the hoarding, the constant preparation for a collapse that never came. I tried to help him, tried to get him to see a therapist, but he refused, said I was part of the conspiracy trying to break him. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. So I left, and I let him think I'd died, because I thought, maybe, just maybe, that would be the shock he needed to get help. Instead, it made everything worse. He built that bunker, didn't he? Underground, hidden, a fortress against the world. Jennifer nodded slowly. You've been alive all this time. Why come forward now? Because I'm dying. Real dying this time, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And before I go, I needed to know if Douglas's madness had meaning. If all those years of suffering, of isolation, of wasted life, had any purpose at all. She looked at Jennifer directly. Did they? Jennifer thought about how to answer. She thought about the 2,847 families the foundation had helped, the 12 community centers they'd built, the scholarship program that had sent 340 children of first responders to college, the affordable housing developments that sheltered 600 families, the small business incubator that had launched 89 successful ventures. Yes, Jennifer said simply. They did. Catherine's face crumpled. Tell me. Please. Tell me it wasn't all for nothing. So Jennifer told her. Everything. She explained how she'd found the bunker, how she'd used the wealth to build the foundation, how Douglas's 40 years of protection had translated into decades of purpose. She showed Catherine the database of families helped, the programs funded, the lives transformed. He saved us, Jennifer said, pulling up photos of her children on her computer. Emma's in medical school now, specializing in trauma care. Jacob's an architect designing affordable housing projects. Sophie works here at the foundation full-time, running our family services division. Without what Douglas left us, we would have lost everything. But you didn't just save yourself, Catherine said, studying the photos and charts. You saved thousands. Because he gave me the choice to. And because I knew what it was like to have nothing, I couldn't just keep it all. It would have destroyed me the same way it destroyed him. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. May I see it? The bunker? Jennifer hesitated. Only a handful of people knew its location, even now. But looking at Catherine's face, the regret, the need for closure, she made a decision. Yes, but there's something you need to know first. Douglas left a journal. Would you like to read it? That afternoon, Jennifer drove Catherine to the Whitmore estate. The mansion had long since been fully restored, and now operated as a museum and event center. Its historical significance carefully documented and preserved. Tourists walked through the public areas daily, never suspecting what lay beneath. Jennifer led Catherine through the library, now lined with books donated by estate sales and collectors who'd heard about the foundation's work. She activated the hidden door mechanism, and Catherine gasped as the bookshelf swung open. I never knew, she whispered. When did he build this? According to the construction permits we found, he started in 1990. Took him 3 years to complete. He used every legal loophole possible to hide what he was doing, classified it as a wine cellar and storm shelter. They descended the steel stairs, and when the lights activated, Catherine stopped halfway, down, her hand gripping the railing. The bunker had changed since Jennifer's first discovery. Most of the wealth was gone, deployed through the foundation, but Jennifer had preserved the space as a kind of shrine. Douglas's desk remained exactly as she'd found it. His journal, in a climate-controlled case, the empty shelves testament to the treasure that had once filled them. This is where he kept it all, Catherine said, more to herself than Jennifer. This is where he spent 40 years protecting money he never used. Not entirely true, Jennifer said, pulling out a folder she'd brought. We found evidence that he made anonymous donations throughout his life. Millions of dollars to various charities, all given quietly. He used the wealth, just so carefully that no one knew. She handed Catherine the folder. Inside were decades of donation receipts, carefully organized by date and amount. Cancer research, homeless shelters, disaster relief, veterans organizations. Douglas had given to them all. He never told me, Catherine whispered. I thought he was just hoarding, just sitting on it all while people suffered. But he was helping all along. In his way, Jennifer agreed. It wasn't healthy, and it cost him everything personally. But he never forgot that wealth had a purpose. Catherine walked slowly through the bunker, running her fingers along the empty shelves, stopping at Douglas's desk. She picked up his journal from its case. Jennifer had given her permission and read the final entry, the one addressed to Michael's family. Use it to live, not just survive, Catherine read aloud. He learned that too late. But you didn't. Because I had what he didn't, people to live for. Children who needed me present, not just provided for. He lost you and never recovered. His protection became his prison. Catherine set down the journal carefully. I've spent 30 years wondering if leaving was the right choice, if I could have saved him somehow. But, reading this, seeing what you've built with what he left, I think maybe this was always how it was meant to end. He couldn't use the wealth himself, but he could pass it to someone who could. He chose wisely, Jennifer said. He chose family. They sat in the bunker for over an hour, while Catherine shared stories of the Douglas she'd known before the crash. Brilliant, funny, generous, passionate, about justice and fairness. A man who'd been broken by watching others suffer, who'd tried to protect everyone, and ended up protecting no one, least of all himself. There's one more thing, Jennifer said as they prepared to leave. The foundation is stable now, self-sustaining, but there's still about $23 million in assets we haven't deployed yet. I've been holding it in reserve, waiting for the right purpose. Would you like to help decide what it funds? Catherine looked startled. Me? But I left him. I let him think I was dead. You loved him once. And you're here now, trying to make peace with his memory. That matters. Besides, Jennifer smiled, you might have insights into what would have made him happy. What would have given him peace? Over the following weeks, Catherine became a regular presence at the foundation. She attended board meetings, reviewed grant applications, shared stories about Douglas that helped the staff understand the man behind the legend. And slowly, a plan took shape. Mental health services, Catherine said during one meeting. Douglas needed help he refused to accept. How many others are like him, suffering, isolated, unable to ask for help because of stigma or pride? The board loved it. They began developing a comprehensive mental health initiative, focused on individuals who'd experienced economic trauma, people who'd lost everything in market crashes, business failures, or sudden catastrophes. The program would offer free counseling, support groups, financial therapy, and crisis intervention. We'll call it the Whitmore Resilience Center, Jennifer announced, honoring both Douglas's struggle and his ultimate purpose. Catherine wiped away tears. He would have hated the attention but loved the mission. The Whitmore Resilience Center opened 18 months later in a renovated building near the Foundation's headquarters. Catherine attended the ribbon cutting, frail now from her cancer treatments, but determined to see this final piece of Douglas's legacy take shape. Emma, now a practicing emergency room physician, had taken a position as the center's medical director. Great-uncle Douglas's wealth gave me the chance to become a doctor, she told the assembled crowd. Now I get to use that education to help others heal from the same kind of pain that haunted him. That's not just inheritance, that's transformation. The local news covered the opening, and for the first time, Jennifer agreed to a full interview about the Foundation's origins. She'd spent 15 years carefully controlling the narrative, revealing only what was necessary. But now, with Catherine's permission, she told the fuller story, not about the exact amount of wealth that remained private, but about Douglas's struggle, his preparation, his ultimate gift. People called him crazy, Jennifer told the reporter, but he was just scared. He'd watched people lose everything, and he was trying to prevent that pain. His methods were extreme, but his heart was in the right place. We're trying to honor that, to help people before they reach the point of desperation, to provide support when crisis hits, to show that asking for help is strength, not weakness. The interview went viral. Suddenly, the Walsh Foundation was receiving calls from across the country, other communities wanting to replicate their programs, individuals seeking help, foundations wanting to partner. The quiet work they'd been doing for 15 years was thrust into the spotlight. Melissa Garrett, who'd moved to Florida years ago after her crusade against Jennifer, had failed spectacularly, sent an email. Jennifer almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of her. "Mrs. Walsh," it began, formally, "I saw your interview. I want to apologize. 15 years ago, I judged you based on your circumstances, rather than your character. I called you worthless when you were worth more than I could comprehend. My grandson struggled with depression in college, and the Whitmore Resilience Center helped save his life. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you gratitude. And I owe Douglas Whitmore's memory better than the mockery I gave it. If there's ever anything I can do to support your work, please let me know." Melissa Garrett. Jennifer showed the email to Catherine. "Should I respond?" "That's your choice," Catherine said. "But remember, transformation is what this is all about. She was wrong, but she's trying to be right now. That takes courage." Jennifer wrote back a brief note, thanking Melissa for her words, and letting her know that monthly donations could be made to the Resilience Center if she wished to contribute. Within a week, a check for $50,000 arrived, with a note, "First installment of restitution for 15 years of being wrong." Catherine passed away 6 months after the Resilience Center opened. She died peacefully, with Jennifer and her children at her bedside. Her final words were, "Tell Douglas, I'm sorry, and tell him thank you. He saved more people dead than either of us did alive." Jennifer arranged a private burial for Catherine next to Douglas's grave, reuniting them in death, since they couldn't find their way back to each other in life. At the funeral, only a handful of people attended, but they were the right ones. The foundation staff who'd come to know Catherine, the families she'd helped select for grants, or the therapists from the Resilience Center, whose programs she'd helped design. Sophie gave the eulogy. At 24, she'd grown into a remarkable woman, compassionate, strategic, carrying forward the family's mission with fierce dedication. "Catherine Whitmore taught us that it's never too late to seek redemption," Sophie said. "She couldn't save Douglas, but she helped us understand him, and in doing so, she helped us serve thousands of others who were suffering the same way. That's the legacy of love. It finds a way to heal even when the original relationship couldn't be saved." After the funeral, Jennifer stood at Douglas's grave for a long time. The headstone they'd placed years ago had been joined by Catherine's, their names finally together again. "You built something that outlasted you," Jennifer said quietly. "You protected wealth that's now protecting people. You thought you failed, but you didn't. You just succeeded in a way you never imagined." She left flowers, white roses. Catherine had mentioned they were Douglas's favorite, and walked back to where her children waited. Emma, with her doctor's badge visible on, and her bag. Jacob with blueprints for the next affordable housing project rolled under his arm. Sophie with her phone already buzzing with calls from families needing help. "Mom," Emma said, linking her arm through Jennifer's. "Are you okay?" "I am," Jennifer said, surprising herself with how true it was. "I really am." The Walsh Foundation continued to grow. By its 20th anniversary, they'd helped over 5,000 families, built 17 community centers, funded 3 hospitals' trauma departments, and established mental health programs in 42 cities. The Whitmore Resilience Center had expanded to 5 locations, serving thousands of people struggling with economic trauma and its psychological aftermath. Jennifer, now 52, had become something she'd never imagined. A leader, a philanthropist, a voice for those struggling in silence. She spoke at conferences, advised other foundations, mentored young people trying to start their own mission-driven organizations. But she never forgot where she'd come from. The widow with nothing, the woman called worthless, the desperate mother standing in front of a burned mansion, wondering if she should just walk away. That memory kept her grounded, kept her focused, kept her grateful. The bunker remained secret, known only to the Foundation's inner circle, and protected by trusts and legal structures that would outlast Jennifer's lifetime. The last of the assets, that final $23 million that had funded the Resilience Center, had been deployed. The vault stood empty now, except for Douglas's journal and the historical documentation of everything that had been found. Jennifer had decided that after her death, the bunker would be sealed and the truth would be revealed, not for publicity, but for history. Future generations should know that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places, that sometimes the mocked become the mighty, and that sometimes a paranoid man's fortress becomes a foundation for hope. But that was for the future. For now, Jennifer had work to do. She arrived at the Foundation's headquarters early one Monday morning to find a young woman waiting outside. She was thin, tired-looking, with a child asleep in a stroller, and desperation written across her face. "Are you Mrs. Walsh?" the woman asked. "I am. I saw your interview about how you were a widow with nothing, and then..." Her voice broke. "My husband died 3 months ago. I have 2 kids. I'm about to lose our apartment. Everyone says I should just give up, move in with family, accept that this is how it is. But I can't. I won't. There has to be another way." Jennifer looked at her, really looked at her, and saw herself 20 years ago. Desperate, determined, refusing to accept that poverty was destiny. "What's your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Chen." Of course it was. Jennifer smiled. "Sarah, come inside. Let's talk about what another way looks like." They walked into the Foundation together, Sarah pushing the stroller, with her sleeping child, Jennifer holding the door open. And as Jennifer glanced back at the street, at the city that had once mocked her and now celebrated her, she felt Douglas's presence like a blessing. He'd spent 40 years building a fortress to protect against a collapse that never came. But in doing so, he'd created something that could protect against real collapses, the kind that happened to families every day: the loss of a spouse, the unexpected medical crisis, the business failure, the moment when everything falls apart and you have to decide whether to give up or keep fighting. Jennifer had kept fighting. And because Douglas had given her the resources to do so, she'd been able to help thousands of others keep fighting too. That was the real treasure beneath the burned house. Not the gold or the bonds or the cash, but the possibility of transformation. The chance to take mockery and turn it into mission. The opportunity to prove that worth isn't measured in dollars, but in what you choose to do with whatever you're given. Jennifer walked Sarah Chen to her office, ready to begin another story of transformation. Because that's what the Walsh Foundation did. They took people at their lowest moment and showed them that the story wasn't over. That burned houses could be rebuilt. That empty vaults could be filled with purpose. That the pathetic could become powerful. Not through money alone, but through courage, compassion, and the radical belief that everyone deserved a chance to rise. Douglas Whitmore had given her that chance 20 years ago. And every day since, Jennifer Walsh had been paying it forward, one family, one life, one transformed future at a time. The burned mansion stood on the hill, fully restored now, a beacon of hope rather than an eyesore. And beneath it, in the empty bunker that had once held $267 million, a simple plaque read, "Here stood protection, waiting to become purpose. Here, wealth learned to serve rather than survive. Here, One man's fear became one woman's faith, and faith became a foundation for thousands. May all who seek refuge find it. May all who need hope receive it. May all who are called worthless discover their worth. Jennifer had installed it herself, years ago, a private memorial that only she and a few trusted others would ever see. But it didn't matter that the world didn't know. What mattered was that the work continued, that the mission endured, that the treasure Douglas had hidden now flowed freely to those who needed it most. And as Sarah Chen sat across from her desk, telling her story of loss and determination, Jennifer knew that the greatest inheritance she'd received wasn't money at all. It was the knowledge that one person's choice to stay, to fight, to transform suffering into service could change everything. The bunker was empty now, but the legacy it had protected would never run dry. That was the real treasure, and it was worth more than all the gold in the world. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.